It's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as a new faction is formed on Dynamite. We see how AEW dealt with the botched Revolution finish, and Kenny Omega seems set to win the Impact World title. All that and more coming up in today's video, but first, Christian Cage recently appeared on Renee Paquette's Oral Sessions podcast to discuss a number of topics. This included his motivation to step back into the ring. Christian recently signed a long-term deal with AEW and will likely be a staple of the main event scene, at least initially. Christian spoke of his desire to show that he is one of the best to ever do it and said, "If I didn't have the confidence that I would be able to go like I did, I wouldn't be attempting this. One thing I take pride in is if my name is on something and I'm involved in it, then I'm all in. It's no different here. I'm coming back to prove that I'm one of the best in my mind to ever do this. It's what I'm born to do. I'm coming back to prove that and prove to the fans. In a weird sense, my body has been preserved for 7 years. All the nagging injuries have kind of healed and I feel good physically and mentally. If I couldn't do this at the highest level, I wouldn't even attempt it. I couldn't do that to the fans, myself, or the company." Christian confirmed in the interview that it was a discussion with Jon Moxley that ultimately led to him choosing AEW over WWE. Fightful Select are reporting that WWE have suspected he would be heading to AEW for some time, which is why he has not been referenced on screen since his Royal Rumble appearance in January. Although I've been on record to state that I think the debut of Christian was slightly overhyped, I'm really looking forward to see how he gets on in AEW and whether he can hang with the best of the best. Dave Meltzer, who is close to many inside AEW, is reporting that Kenny Omega was legitimately furious following the botched ending of AEW Revolution, which saw a failed pyro ruin the ending of the show. Omega no doubt had a big hand in the structure of the match and the aftermath, and the explosion would have been an epic way to write Jon Moxley off TV, whilst also reuniting him with Eddie Kingston. This reported fury on Omega's behalf contradicts AEW's public claims that the pyro fail was planned. Fightful Select are also reporting that there was significant heat on the third-party rigging crew who were responsible for setting up the explosion, although they were apparently not very apologetic, brushing off the situation. When asked, an unnamed wrestler joked that the rigging crew got more heat than the main event segment. You can't blame AEW personnel being mad at the crew, who have publicly embarrassed the company, forcing them to switch to Plan B. And speaking of the explosion, the hardcore legend Mick Foley, who performed in many exploding barbed wire death matches as Cactus Jack in Japan, took to Twitter to reveal his thoughts on the botch. Cactus has experience with failed explosions, as seen by the ending of his match with Terry Funk at the King of the Deathmatch in 1995, where the ending explosion was underwhelming. Mick wrote, "Sad but true. I've been there at the 1995 King of the Deathmatch when the exploding ring underperformed. I feel bad for Mox and Omega, but suggest that AEW deep six the Kenny built the crummy ring story and just admit that mistakes happen, and will learn from this mistake. Just my opinion." Another wrestling legend, Lance Storm, replied, "Agreed. Quickest way to move on is to admit you screwed up and apologize. Everyone can and will get over it and move on. Sometimes even the pyro forgets a high spot." And I couldn't agree more with the two wrestling legends, as this has left a sour taste in many AEW fans' mouths. I agree with keeping up the fact that Kenny built a dud ring on TV, as in on Dynamite in storyline, but AEW have to come out and admit that it was a botched explosion. And before you say they don't want to break kayfabe, they've kept this story up even during non-kayfabe media calls. In the same interview that Tony Khan was spinning the story, he stated that both Moxley and Omega were fine, this being after an exploding barbed wire death match, so keeping kayfabe doesn't seem to be the goal here. It's unclear why they won't just come out and admit it, and going by our poll, 80% of fans aren't even buying the story, so I think it's time for AEW just to own up. Many people paid money to see this exploding barbed wire death match and was one of the main reasons they tuned into the show in the first place. Pretending this was the goal all along either suggests that it's shitty booking, or it was in fact a botch, which is obviously the case. Either way, let's move on and have a look at how AEW dealt with the botch last night on Dynamite. Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley sat together at a table sharing a drink. Kingston admitted that he had a feeling of anxiety which caused him to black out. He compared this to the time he was arrested and was being told by guards that he was being sent to Rikers Island, which is a prison. Moxley would then go on to joke that the explosion was paid for by Impact Wrestling. I can't really see a better way to move on from this disaster in terms of storyline, so good stuff here from both men. Also on Dynamite, we saw the formation of a brand new faction as MJF and Wardlow turned on the Inner Circle to align with Tully Blanchard, Shawn Spears and FTR. Sammy Guevara, who left the Inner Circle due to not trusting MJF, came to the aid of his former stablemates, but to no avail. And before we continue, if you're enjoying the video, make sure you drop a like down below as it helps me out a lot. And why not subscribe as we head towards 10,000 subscribers. But let's get back to the video. The new stable beat the hell out of Chris Jericho, with Wardlow powerbombing him off the stage. Will this new group be called the Five Horsemen? Who knows, but it looks like Sammy Guevara is back in the Inner Circle as they set to feud with MJF's new army. Christian Cage made his AEW Dynamite debut, coming to the aid of Eddie Kingston following his confrontation with Omega and the Good Brothers. Cage went face to face with the world champion, perhaps foreshadowing a future Canadian dream match between the two men. Christian went to hit the kill switch before Don Callis pulled his friend away, preventing the move. Elsewhere in the show, Rey Fenix defeated Matt Jackson ahead of he and Pac's AEW tag title match against the Young Bucks. Cody Rhodes defeated Seth Gargis via submission with a figure 4 leg lock. He was then confronted by Pentagon Jr., with the two being broken up by multiple wrestlers. Lance Archer interrupted an interview with Sting, but no physicality happened. Ethan Page won his first AEW singles match, defeating Lee Johnson. Thunder Rosa, Hikaru Shida and Ryo Mizunami defeated Britt Baker, Maki Ito and Nyla Rose, and it was also announced that Thunder Rosa will take on Britt Baker in an unsanctioned match next week. Matt Hardy hired the services of the Butcher and the Blade. And finally, Darby Allin retained his TNT title against the face of the Revolution ladder match winner, Scorpio Sky. After the match, Darby offered him his hand to help him up, but Scorpio Sky attacked him, laying him out. In 6 weeks' time, the AEW World Champion Kenny Omega receives a shot at the unified TNA Impact Championship in a title versus title match. His opponent will be decided this Saturday at the Impact Sacrifice pay-per-view, as the Impact World Champion Rich Swann takes on the self-declared TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose. Moose has been carrying the old TNA title with him for a while, with the title only being recognized as official this past week. This almost guarantees that Kenny Omega is set to add 2 more belts to his collection, adding to his AEW World Championship and his AAA Mega Championship. We could well be set to see Omega walk out on AEW Dynamite with 4 belts in his possession, which would be a very cool look. The belt collector has a mission, and I can't really see Kenny losing here. Both Impact pay-per-views are available on FITE using our affiliate links in the description if you fancy supporting the channel, and let me know if you'll be watching the shows in the comments down below. And if Omega does add 4 belts to his collection, could he be heading back to Japan to take on his former Golden Lovers partner Kota Ibushi for the IWGP Unified title? Now that's something I'd love to see.